So this is pretty good, eh? So I was thinking today, well, and for a long time, about what I wanted to talk about, and I guess I'm always trying to bring together an unending stream of thought that I've been developing, I would say, for 40 years, really. And I thought I would try to extend that tonight, maybe farther than I've been able to manage before. And this seems to be exactly the right place to do it. In Stephen's opening remarks, he mentioned that this geographical locale is very tightly associated with the emergence of the idea of the Logos, particularly on the Greek side, but also, as it turns out, on the Christian side. And it's really the bringing together of the concepts, the dual concepts of the Logos, from the Greek and the Christian side that produced, for better or worse, and hopefully for better, the modern world. And so I want to walk through some ideas that I've been developing tonight and make comment on them and see if I can lay them out in something approximating an intelligible form, which would be the right thing to do, given that we're talking about the Logos. So you might think about the Logos. It's worthwhile and useful to think about the Logos as something like the intrinsic order of the cosmos. Of course, that begs the question in some sense, well, a number of questions. What do you mean by intrinsic? What do you mean by order? What do you mean by cosmos? And you could break the cosmos down to begin with in something into two subcategories, macrocosmic and microcosmic. And you can think about the microcosm and the macrocosm in a purely objective sense. You could think about the microcosm as the hidden world beneath the resolution of our vision. So, of course, there's an unbelievably active world of hidden complexity at work at levels of resolution much higher than we can see, moving all the way down to the quantum realm. And as scientists, we've been very good at elucidating the nature of that microcosm. And then you could think of the macrocosm as the external world that extends up above us into the objective cosmos itself. But there's another way of thinking about that that brings the psychological on board, and that is that the microcosm is, in some sense, the objective material world that beckons at higher levels of resolution. But the macrocosm is something more conceptual and psychological rather than something objective and external. And so that's a good thing to keep in mind as we move forward through this exercise in thought. Another way of thinking about this, so we can hit the underlying conceptual target from a multitude of different dimensions, you could also think that we're beset by two mysteries in some sense. We have the world of what matters, and the degree to which the world of what matters is the most real is indeterminate, because it depends on how you define reality. If you define reality as that which exists in the objective world, then the world of what matters is not fundamental. But it's my observation that we act as if the world of what matters is more real than the world of matter. And I think, in some sense, the most compelling evidence for that, even to a skeptic, and it's a pessimistic form of evidence, but it suffices, sometimes pessimistic evidence is the most potent. The reality of pain is undeniable, and it's not amenable to rational argumentation. It announces its existence. And for a long time, I thought, in some real sense, that there was no more fundamental reality than pain. And there's an ethical dimension to that, too, because if you accept the reality of pain, there seems to come with it an impetus to eliminate unnecessary pain. And to some degree, we can understand that as the basis of the moral impulse, and maybe to eliminate the unnecessary pain of the innocent, like the unnecessary pain of children, for example. And so, well, we accept the existence of pain as something so real that we will almost instantaneously act on it. And I would say that's especially the case in the case, say, of infants. And so it isn't obvious what's real because it depends in some sense on how you define the term. But my sense is that what people believe is most accurately reflected not in what they say or in the propositions about the world they lay out, but in how they act. And that's also something subject to debate, but it's not a shallow argument to say that your belief is most deeply reflected in your action. In fact, I think in some sense it's the deepest of arguments. And you know perfectly well that you can say one thing and do another, and you also know that you regard people who do that as hypocrites, and you tend to regard what they do as a more profound pointer to what they believe than what they say. And so you'll call them on that too. And so that means that there are some meanings that we regard as inviolably real. Now, the reason I concentrated on pain is because it's pretty easy to destroy joy. You can do that with a rational critique, and we're quite good at that. And you can destroy faith, and you can destroy hope, and you can destroy enthusiasm, and you can often do that even with a casual word. But pain is much more resistant to that sort of rational dismissal. I thought over the years, thinking as much as I could about unjust pain, let's say, as a fundamental reality, wondering if there is anything more real than that. And then I would say, well, yes, there is. That which dispels pain is more real than pain. And that's because to dispel something, you have to be more powerful than that thing in some sense. And then you can ask yourself at all sorts of different levels of analysis, what's capable of dispelling pain? Or at least, let's say, rendering pain acceptable, which is not perhaps as deep a solution or as desirable a solution, but is also not nothing. And I would say that many of the things we regard as cardinal virtues are virtues, in fact, because if you have them on your side, you can, in fact, contend